He threw out his pregnant ex-wife in the rain. Years later, she returned with quadruplets and exposed his biggest secret. But she had one more surprise. Are you our daddy? You have eyes like us. The question came from a 3-year-old boy standing in a hospital waiting room, his small finger pointing at a man who just walked through the door. The man froze. His eyes moved from the child to 2 other identical boys sitting nearby, all staring at him with the same gray eyes he saw in the mirror every morning, the same distinctive cleft in their tiny chins that marked his own face. Kendall, a woman's voice cut through the silence, sharp and protective. What are those boys doing here? Who are they? The man's voice came out strangled. Those boys. They look exactly like me, the woman he'd been staring at, the one he'd thrown out of his mansion. 3 years ago, while she begged him to listen, stood slowly. Her arms gathered the 3 boys close. They're mine, she said, her voice like ice. And you need to leave. Now. But before anyone could move, a small voice called from the emergency room. Mama, is Quinn okay? The man's head snapped toward the sound. Quinn, he repeated. You said 3 boys. How many children are there? The woman's eyes met his, and in them he saw 3 years of pain, struggle, and a truth that was about to destroy him. 4, she said simply. I have 4 sons, quadruplets. The babies I was carrying the night you threw me out in the rain and called me a liar. The waiting room went completely silent. Nurses stopped walking. Other patients stared, and the man who thought he knew exactly what his life was felt everything he believed shatter in an instant. But this story, this isn't where it began. To understand how Kendall Rhodes went from desperate and pregnant on the streets to a successful lawyer raising 4 identical sons alone, and how Fletcher Grayson went from throwing away his family to discovering them in the most shocking way possible, we need to go back to the night the rain fell, and one terrible decision changed everything. If you've ever been underestimated, thrown away, or told you weren't enough, this story is for you. Because what you're about to hear isn't just about betrayal. It's about a woman who turned her destruction into power. And before this is over, she'll have one more surprise that nobody, not even Fletcher, could see coming. Hit that subscribe button right now, because every twist in this story will leave you speechless. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had to rebuild your life from nothing? Let's begin. Portland, Oregon, 3 years earlier. The kind of October night where the rain doesn't just fall, it attacks. Kendall Rhodes stood on the marble steps of the Victorian mansion she'd called home. For 2 years, watching her suitcase tip over, spilling clothes onto the wet stone. Thunder cracked overhead like the sky itself was breaking apart. Get out. Fletcher's voice came from behind her, cold and final. That baby isn't mine. You're nothing but a liar trying to trap me. Kendall turned, rain already soaking through her coat. Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach, to the barely visible bump that held not 1 baby, but 4. 4 tiny lives Fletcher didn't even know about because he wouldn't let her finish a single sentence. Fletcher, please, she said, her voice breaking. Just let me explain. The fertility treatment worked. I can show you the ultrasound. I can prove this baby is yours. Baby? Fletcher laughed, the sound bitter and cruel. Kendall, I've seen the medical records. Adriana showed me everything. The doctor's report about your infertility, the emails between you and your fertility specialist. She even showed me the photos of you 2 together. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Adriana. The name hit Kendall like a physical blow. Her former college roommate. Her supposed best friend. The woman who'd been staying with them for the past month, offering support and friendship. What did she tell you? Kendall asked, her mind racing. What did she show you? Fletcher stepped back into the doorway, his silhouette framed by the warm light of the home they'd shared. The truth, he said flatly, that you can't have children naturally, that you've been having an affair with Dr. Marcus Webb, that this supposed pregnancy is either a desperate lie or another man's child you're trying to pass off as mine. The accusation was so absurd, so completely fabricated, that Kendall actually laughed. An affair? Fletcher, I've never been unfaithful to you. Not once. Not ever. The medical records Adriana showed you, those were old, from before the treatment. The new scans show I'm pregnant, with your baby. If you'd just look at the ultrasound in my purse, you'd see. I don't want to see your forged documents, Fletcher interrupted. I know what you're doing, Kendall. You're trying to manipulate me because you know I'm successful now. You gave up your little art gallery job, and now you want to secure your future with a baby that isn't mine." Inside the house, Kendall could see Adriana emerge from the shadows of the living room. She was wearing one of Kendall's robes, her blonde hair perfect despite the late hour. She wrapped her arms around Fletcher's shoulders from behind, her chin resting possessively on his shoulder. Her eyes met Kendall's through the rain, and the smallest smile curved her lips, a smile of victory. Kendall felt something inside her go cold and hard. She finally understood. This wasn't about medical records or misunderstandings. This was a calculated betrayal. Adriana had wanted Fletcher from the beginning, and she'd systematically destroyed Kendall's marriage with lies. "Fletcher." Kendall tried one more time, her voice steady despite the rain pouring down her face. "I am pregnant. The baby is yours. The babies are yours. If you would just listen for 1 minute." "Babies?" Fletcher's expression shifted to disgust. "Now it's babies? Plural? You can't even keep your lies straight." He disappeared into the house and returned moments later with a box. Her books, her favorite coffee mug, the framed photo from their honeymoon in Positano. He thrust the box into her arms. "Take your things and go. My lawyer will contact you about the divorce. Don't come back here. Don't call me. We're done." "Fletcher, please," Kendall begged, the box growing heavy in her arms. "Think about what you're doing. Think about us. 2 years of marriage. Don't throw it away because of lies." "I'm throwing away a mistake," Fletcher said coldly. "You're the lie, Kendall. Everything about you was a lie." He stepped back into the house. Adriana's smile widened as she looked at Kendall one last time. Then Fletcher slammed the door with such force that the sound echoed through the rain-soaked street. Kendall stood there for a long moment, the box in her arms growing heavier as rain soaked through the cardboard. Through the tall Victorian windows, she watched Adriana turn Fletcher toward her, reaching up to touch his face. Watched him allow it. Watched the life she'd built disappear behind expensive glass and lies. She walked to her car on numb legs. The 10-year-old sedan she'd kept from before the marriage, the one Fletcher had always told her to get rid of. The one she'd stubbornly held onto because it was hers. Now she was grateful for that stubbornness. As she loaded the box into the back seat, her phone buzzed. A reminder from her fertility clinic. Ultrasound photos, ready for pickup. "Congratulations on your quadruplets." Quadruplets. 4 babies. 4 lives growing inside her that Fletcher would never know about, because he'd chosen to believe lies over the woman he'd promised to love forever. He'd chosen his pride over giving her even 5 minutes to explain. Kendall placed both hands on her stomach, feeling the slight swell that would soon grow impossible to hide. "I promise you," she whispered to the 4 tiny heartbeats inside her. "I promise. I'll protect you. I'll give you everything you need. You'll never know the man who rejected you before you were even born." She climbed into her car and drove away from the Victorian mansion, away from the life she'd known, away from Fletcher Grayson. She had $43 in her wallet, half a tank of gas, and 4 babies depending on her, and absolutely no idea where to go. The Portland Women's Shelter on Morrison Street wasn't what Kendall had imagined a shelter would be. It was clean, warm, and the woman at the intake desk had kind eyes. "Your name, honey?" the woman asked gently. "Kendall Rhodes," Kendall said, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. "I'm pregnant. I have nowhere else to go." The woman, whose name tag read Loretta, didn't judge, didn't ask questions that would shame her. She simply nodded and picked up a clipboard. "How far along?" 12 weeks. "Any medical complications we should know about?" Kendall hesitated. Then, "I'm carrying quadruplets." Loretta's pen stopped moving. She looked up, her eyes widening. "Quadruplets? Honey, you need specialized prenatal care. High-risk monitoring. Have you been seeing a maternal fetal specialist?" "I had an appointment scheduled for next week," Kendall said. "But I don't know if my insurance is still active. My ex-husband, I'm not sure what he's done about the insurance." Loretta set down her clipboard and came around the desk. She took Kendall's cold hands in her warm ones. "Listen to me carefully. You and those babies are going to be okay. We have a program here for high-risk pregnancies. We'll get you connected with County Hospital's maternal fetal medicine clinic. They have a charity care program. You won't be turned away." Tears Kendall hadn't allowed herself to cry on Fletcher's doorstep finally spilled over. "I don't understand how this happened," she whispered. "This morning I had a home, a husband, a life. Now I have nothing. You have 4 babies who need you to be strong, Loretta said firmly. That's not nothing. That's everything. Now come on. Let's get you settled in a bed, and tomorrow we'll start figuring out the rest. The shelter room was small. A single bed, a locker for belongings, a shared bathroom down the hall. Kendall lay on the thin mattress that night, listening to the sound of other women's quiet conversations through the walls, and made herself a promise. This is temporary. I will build a life for my children. I will never be this powerless again. She pulled out her laptop, the one item of value she still owned, and opened the browser. Online law schools, she typed into the search bar. If she was going to protect her children, she needed to understand the law. Needed to become the kind of person who could fight back against men like Fletcher, who used power and money to destroy people. By morning, she'd submitted applications to 3 online law schools. By the end of the week, she'd been accepted to 2. By the end of the month, she'd started classes while working overnight, data entry jobs she could do from the shelter's computer lab. The pregnancy was brutal. At 16 weeks, Kendall's body already looked full-term with 1 baby. Her back ached constantly. Her feet swelled. Simple tasks like climbing stairs left her breathless. But she showed up to every prenatal appointment, took notes in every law school lecture, and worked every shift she could manage. Your blood pressure is elevated, Dr. Sarah Chen said during the 20-week ultrasound. I'm putting you on modified bed rest. Kendall stared at the doctor. I can't do bed rest. I have to work. I have to pay for. She gestured vaguely at her enormous stomach. All of this. Dr. Chen's expression was sympathetic but firm. If you don't rest, you risk premature labor. Quadruplets born before 30 weeks have serious complications. Some don't survive. Is work worth that risk? It wasn't. Kendall reduced her hours, applied for every assistance program Loretta helped her find, and spent her mandatory rest time studying contract law and family court procedures. She learned about asset division, child support calculations, and parental rights. She learned how men like Fletcher hid money in shell corporations and offshore accounts. She learned how to fight back. At 28 weeks, Kendall woke in a pool of fluid. Her water had broken. She was rushed to County Hospital where a team of doctors performed an emergency cesarean section. She was awake for the procedure, terrified and alone, listening to the medical team's urgent voices. First baby is out. It's a boy. Second baby. Another boy. Third baby. Also a boy. Fourth baby. Boy. They're all boys. 4 tiny cries filled the operating room. 4 lives that had depended on Kendall for 28 weeks now depended on teams of NICU nurses and sophisticated medical equipment. Kendall caught only the briefest glimpse of each baby, impossibly small and red, before they were whisked away to incubators. Later, in recovery, a nurse brought her photos. 4 identical faces, each weighing less than 3 pounds. Tubes and wires covered their tiny bodies. They're fighters, the nurse said. Especially the smallest one. He's determined. Kendall touched each photo with a trembling finger. She needed to name them. They couldn't just be baby roads A, B, C, and D. Names meant identity, meant she believed they would survive to grow into those names. Oliver, she said, touching the first photo. After Oliver Jeffers, you're my oldest. You'll be strong. Parker, she said to the second photo. After Cornelia Parker, you'll be thoughtful. Quinn, she named the third. After Mark Quinn, you'll be brave. Ryan, she whispered to the smallest, the one the nurse said was fighting hardest. After Tim Ryan, you'll be determined. 4 names. 4 artists. Pieces of the dream she'd given up when she married Fletcher. The dream of curating galleries and surrounding herself with beauty. That dream was gone, but her sons would carry it forward. The NICU became Kendall's world. She was there every day, despite the pain from her C-section incision. She held each boy when the nurses allowed it, skin-to-skin contact that helped their tiny bodies regulate temperature. She pumped breast milk every 3 hours, determined to give them what little she could. She read them stories through the incubator ports, her voice hoarse from talking for hours. During the long nights when the babies were stable and she was forced to leave, Kendall returned to the shelter and studied. She completed assignments for her law classes. She researched Portland law firms that specialized in family law. She planned her future with the same intensity she'd once planned art exhibitions. After 42 days, the doctors said the boys could go home. All 4 had reached 5 pounds. All 4 were breathing on their own. All 4 were feeding well. You'll need specialized equipment, the hospital's social worker explained. 4 car seats, 4 cribs, formula, since you won't be able to produce enough milk for quadruplets, diapers, so many diapers. The costs were astronomical, but the shelter community rallied. Loretta organized donations. Other shelter residents contributed what little they could. A local church heard about the quadruplets and delivered 4 cribs, 4 car seats, and 6 months' worth of formula. Taking home 4 infants to a shelter room was surreal. Kendall developed a system immediately, color-coded everything. Oliver was blue, Parker was green, Quinn was yellow, Ryan was red. Each baby had colored onesies, colored bottles, colored pacifiers. It was the only way to tell them apart, and the only way to track who'd eaten, who needed changing, who was due for medication. The first night home, all 4 babies cried in rotation. By the time Kendall finished feeding and changing the last one, the first one was crying again. She got 90 minutes of sleep total, in 15-minute increments. How do people do this? She asked Loretta the next morning, her eyes red from exhaustion. Usually with a partner, Loretta said honestly. What you're doing, raising quadruplets alone? That's superhuman, Kendall. I don't feel superhuman, Kendall said, watching Oliver spit up on his blue onesie while Parker simultaneously needed a diaper change. I feel like I'm drowning. But you're not drowning, Loretta pointed out. You're swimming. Every day, you're swimming. Over the following months, Kendall established a rhythm. Wake at 5. Feed all 4 babies. Change all 4 babies. Put babies down for morning nap. Study during nap time. Wake babies. Feed. Change. Playtime. Afternoon nap. Study. Evening feeding. Bath time assembly line. Bedtime routine. Overnight feedings every 3 hours. Repeat. She completed her first year of law school with a 3.8 gigapascals while caring for 4 infants alone. She got accepted for a second-year internship with Morrison and Associates, a small family law firm in Seattle that offered remote work options. Seattle, a fresh start, a city where nobody knew her as Fletcher Grayson's ex-wife, where she could rebuild without the ghost of her old life haunting her. On the boy's first birthday, Kendall stood in the small apartment she'd managed to rent in Seattle's Fremont neighborhood. It wasn't much. 2 bedrooms, one for her and one for the quadruplets, second-hand furniture, thrift store decorations. But it was theirs. She'd signed the lease in her name, paid the deposit with money she'd earned. 4 smash cakes sat on the kitchen table, one for each boy. Loretta had flown up from Portland for the celebration. Her new neighbor Zara had brought balloons. Paige Morrison from the law firm had sent gifts. Happy birthday, dear Oliver, Parker, Quinn, and Ryan, they sang. 4 one-year-olds smashed cake into their faces with delighted abandon. Oliver tried to share his cake with everyone. Parker studied his cake carefully before eating. Quinn smashed his with both fists, laughing. Ryan ate his methodically, savoring each bite. 4 different personalities, Kendall marveled. Identical on the outside, completely unique on the inside. That night, after the boys were asleep in their cribs, Kendall sat at her laptop and checked her law school grades. She'd passed everything. She was on track to take the bar exam in 18 months. After that, she could work full-time as a lawyer, could build real financial security for her sons. Her phone buzzed with an email notification. Morrison and Associates was offering her a junior associate position upon passing the bar. The salary was modest, but livable. More than she'd ever made at the art gallery. Enough to support 4 children. We see your potential, Paige Morrison had written in the email. You have an instinct for family law cases, especially those involving hidden assets and financial deception. We'd like you to specialize in that area. Kendall accepted the position immediately. Hidden assets and financial deception. Men like Fletcher who used money to control and manipulate. She would become an expert at finding what they tried to hide. Would become the lawyer she'd needed 3 years ago. The next 2 years passed in a blur of toddler chaos and legal studying. The boys learned to walk, all 4 taking their first steps on the same day, holding on to each other for support. They learned to talk, developing their own language, before mastering English. They started preschool, color-coded backpacks making drop-off more manageable. Kendall passed the bar exam on her first attempt, became a licensed attorney, started taking cases for Morrison and Associates, built a reputation as the lawyer who never missed hidden assets, who fought ruthlessly for her clients, who never backed down from powerful opponents. She specialized in representing women, who'd been abandoned by wealthy partners, women whose husbands had thrown them away like they were nothing. Every case was personal. Every victory was revenge against Fletcher, even though he didn't know it. By the time the boys turned 3, Kendall had argued 43 cases and won 41 of them. She'd uncovered millions in hidden assets. She'd secured fair settlements for dozens of women. She'd made senior associate at Morrison and Associates. She'd bought a reliable minivan and moved to a slightly larger apartment with a small yard. She'd survived. More than that, she'd thrived. Oliver, Parker, Quinn, and Ryan were happy, healthy 3-year-olds who knew nothing about the father who'd rejected them. They knew they were loved. They knew their mama worked hard to give them everything they needed. They knew their family might be smaller than other families, but it was enough, and Kendall believed she'd built a life where Fletcher Grayson could never touch them again. She was wrong. The case file landed on Kendall's desk on a rainy Tuesday morning. Nicole Zhang, seeking divorce from her husband Marcus Zhang, tech executive. Standard case until Kendall started reviewing the financial documents. The patterns were familiar. Too familiar. Shell corporations in Delaware. Offshore accounts with routing numbers she recognized. Real estate purchases in relatives' names using the exact same corporate structure she'd seen in 3 other cases. She pulled up those other case files and spread them across her desk. Different clients, different opposing parties, but the same methodology for hiding assets. The same sophisticated legal framework, the same law firm defending all of them. Grayson Legal Partners. Kendall's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. She clicked on the firm's website. The photo on the homepage showed Fletcher standing in front of a glass office building, looking successful and confident. The About US page detailed the firm's expansion from Portland to Seattle 6 months ago. 6 months. Fletcher had been in Seattle for 6 months, in the same city as Kendall and the boys, and she'd had no idea. Her hands started shaking. She set down the coffee before she spilled it. Breathe, she told herself. You're not the same woman he threw away. You're a successful attorney. He can't hurt you anymore. But what if he saw her? Saw the boys? Those distinctive gray eyes that marked them as unmistakably his? What if he put the pieces together and demanded parental rights? Could he take her children from her? Kendall, Paige Morrison knocked on her office door. You okay? You look pale. Kendall forced herself to breathe normally. I'm fine. Just reviewing the Zhang case. Paige entered and sat across from her. It's a good case. Strong evidence of hidden assets. The deposition is scheduled for Thursday at our office. Should be straightforward. Who's the opposing counsel? Kendall asked, though she already knew. Grayson Legal Partners. Paige consulted her notes. Fletcher Grayson himself is handling it. Apparently, he takes the high-profile cases personally. Why? Kendall closed the file carefully. No reason. I'll handle the deposition. Paige studied her face. You're sure? If there's a conflict, I can take it. No conflict, Kendall lied. I can handle Fletcher Grayson. After Paige left, Kendall allowed herself exactly 5 minutes of panic. 5 minutes to remember the rain, and the rejection, and the fear. 5 minutes to imagine Fletcher seeing the boys, those 4 perfect copies of himself. Then she closed her eyes, counted to 10, and got to work. If she was going to face Fletcher for the first time in 3 years, she would be prepared. She would be powerful. She would show him exactly what she'd become without him. That evening, Zara watched the boys while Kendall stood in front of her bathroom mirror, practicing. My name is Kendall Rhodes, attorney at law, she said to her reflection. I'm here to discuss the Zhang divorce settlement. Her reflection looked composed, professional, nothing like the desperate pregnant woman who'd stood in the rain 3 years ago. She'd cut her hair into a sleek bob. She wore tailored suits now, instead of the artistic flowing dresses Fletcher had preferred. She'd built muscle from carrying 4 toddlers everywhere. She looked strong. You can do this, she told herself. 2 hours. That's all it is. 2 hours of professional deposition and then you never have to see him again. But that night, after the boys were in bed, Oliver climbed out of his crib and padded into Kendall's room. He did this sometimes when he couldn't sleep. Mama, he whispered, climbing into her bed. What's wrong, sweetie? Do we have a daddy? Oliver asked, his gray eyes serious. All the other kids at school have daddies. Parker says we must have one somewhere because that's how babies are made. Kendall's heart clenched. Yes, she said carefully. You have a father. Where is he? He's not part of our family, Kendall said. But you have me, and Aunt Zara, and all our friends who love you." Oliver was quiet for a moment. "Did he die?" "No, baby. He's alive. He just—" Kendall searched for words that wouldn't wound. "He made a choice not to be with us." "Did we do something bad?" "No." Kendall pulled Oliver close, tears stinging her eyes. "You did nothing wrong. Nothing. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and those mistakes hurt people. But that's not your fault." "Okay," Oliver said, satisfied with the explanation for now. "I'm glad we have you, Mama." After Oliver fell asleep, Kendall lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Thursday's deposition suddenly felt more complicated. How could she sit across from Fletcher, knowing he had 4 sons who asked about him, knowing that somewhere in his DNA he was connected to these 4 perfect children? "But he threw you away," her angry voice reminded her. "He chose to believe lies. He doesn't deserve to know them." Still, the question haunted her. Did the boys deserve to know their father, even if their father hadn't wanted them? She pushed the thought away. Thursday was about Nicole Zhang's case, about getting a fair settlement for a woman whose husband had hidden assets. It wasn't about Kendall's past or the boys' future. It was just work. She almost believed it. Thursday morning arrived with gray skies and the threat of rain. Kendall woke at 5 as usual, started the morning routine with the boys. Oliver was chatty, telling elaborate stories about dinosaurs. Parker was quiet, watching everything. Quinn was energetic, trying to climb the furniture. Ryan was cuddly, wanting extra hugs. "You're nervous," Zara observed when she arrived to take the boys to preschool. "Big case today?" "Something like that," Kendall said, adjusting Quinn's yellow jacket. "You've got this," Zara said. "You always do." At the office, Kendall arrived an hour early. She arranged her files with precision, reviewed every document one more time, set up the conference room so she'd be sitting with her back to the windows, Fletcher backlit and slightly uncomfortable. Small power plays, but they mattered. At 8:45, Paige stuck her head in. Grayson's firm called. "They're running 15 minutes late." "Fine," Kendall said, grateful for the extra time to compose herself. At 9:15, the conference room door opened, and Fletcher Grayson walked into her life again. He'd aged. Silver threaded through his dark hair at the temples. Lines bracketed his mouth that hadn't been there 3 years ago. But his presence still commanded attention, his expensive suit tailored perfectly, his gray eyes scanning the room with practiced assessment. Those eyes landed on Kendall and stopped. Time seemed to fracture. Kendall watched emotions flicker across Fletcher's face. Shock, confusion, recognition, something that might have been regret. "Counselor," she said evenly, gesturing to the chairs across from her. "Shall we begin?" Fletcher remained frozen in the doorway. His associate, a nervous-looking young man, shifted uncomfortably behind him. The court reporter glanced between them, sensing the tension. "Kendall," Fletcher finally said. "Mr. Grayson," Kendall corrected coolly. "Please, have a seat. We have a lot to cover today." Fletcher slowly crossed to the table and sat. He couldn't seem to stop staring at her. "Kendall, I didn't know you were in Seattle. I didn't know you'd become a lawyer." "There's a lot you don't know about me," Kendall replied. "Now, regarding the Zhang case, I'd like to start with the financial disclosures from March of last year." She slid a document across the table. Fletcher took it mechanically, his eyes still on her face. "You look different," he said. 3 years will do that." Kendall's voice was professional, detached. "Mr. Grayson, if you could direct your attention to page 4, you'll see several discrepancies I'd like to address." The deposition began. Kendall was ruthless. She'd spent the last 3 days memorizing every detail of the case, finding every inconsistency, preparing for every possible objection. She systematically dismantled Fletcher's arguments, producing document after document that proved his client had hidden assets. Fletcher tried to redirect, to object, to find loopholes, but Kendall had learned from the best. She'd studied his old cases, knew his strategies, anticipated his moves. For every escape route he tried, she'd already built a wall. After an hour, Fletcher's client was visibly sweating. After 2 hours, the associate was frantically taking notes, trying to keep up. After 3 hours, Fletcher called for a lunch break. The moment the court reporter and clients left the room, Fletcher turned to Kendall. "We need to talk." "We are talking," Kendall said, gathering her files. "About the Zhang case. Not about the case. About us. About what happened." "There is no us, Fletcher. And what happened was 3 years ago. I've moved on." Kendall, please. He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it hurt. I was wrong. About everything. I found out what Adriana did. Kendall's hands stilled on her files. When? 6 months after you left. She admitted she'd fabricated the evidence. The medical records, the affair, all of it. Fletcher's voice was heavy with regret. I broke off the engagement immediately. So you believed her lies for 6 months before questioning them? Kendall asked. That's supposed to make me feel better? I tried to find you, Fletcher said. For 2 years, I hired investigators. I checked hospitals, shelters, every possible lead. It was like you'd vanished. I did vanish. Kendall met his eyes directly. I had to. You threw me out while I was pregnant, Fletcher. Accused me of cheating. Called me a liar. What exactly did you think would happen when you found me? That I'd fall into your arms and forgive you? I wanted to apologize, Fletcher said quietly. To make things right. You can't make this right, Kendall said flatly. What's done is done. Now, if we're finished with the personal discussion, I need lunch before the afternoon session. She walked toward the door. Fletcher's voice stopped her. Were you really pregnant? That night when I threw you out? Kendall's hand tightened on the doorknob. She could lie. Could tell him no, she'd never been pregnant. He'd ruined their marriage over nothing. Could walk away and keep her son safe from his rejection forever. But part of her, the part that was still wounded and angry, wanted him to know what he'd done. Wanted him to understand the magnitude of his mistake. Yes, she said without turning around. I was pregnant. She walked out before he could ask anything else. In the bathroom, Kendall splashed cold water on her face. Her hands were shaking again. Seeing Fletcher, talking to him, being in the same room after 3 years, it had cracked something open inside her. Old wounds she'd thought healed were suddenly bleeding again. Her phone buzzed. A text from Zara with a photo of all 4 boys at the park, covered in mud, grinning wildly. Hope your meeting is going better than our morning. These boys are wild today. Kendall smiled despite everything. Her boys. Her reason for surviving. Fletcher had no idea they existed, and she intended to keep it that way. She returned to the conference room for the afternoon session with renewed determination. The deposition continued, even more contentious than before. Kendall pressed harder, her questions sharper. Fletcher made mistakes he wouldn't have made if he wasn't distracted. By 5 o'clock, Kendall had completely destroyed his case. I think we're done here, she said, closing her final file. My office will send settlement terms tomorrow. Fletcher stood slowly. Kendall, can we please talk? Really talk? We have nothing to discuss beyond this case, Kendall said. Goodbye, Fletcher. She walked out of the conference room down the hallway into the elevator, held herself together until she reached her car in the parking garage. Then she collapsed against the steering wheel, her whole body shaking. She'd done it. She'd faced Fletcher and won. She'd been professional, powerful, in control. Everything she'd wanted to be. So why did she feel like she'd been torn apart all over again? That evening, Kendall held her boys extra tight during bedtime routine. She read 3 extra stories, gave 4 extra kisses, and lingered in their room long after they'd fallen asleep, just watching them breathe, their identical faces peaceful in rest. You're safe, she whispered. I'll always keep you safe. But even as she said it, she wondered if she was making a promise she could keep. Because Fletcher was in Seattle now, and secrets she'd learned had a way of coming to light when you least expected it. The next morning, Kendall tried to return to normal. She dropped the boys at preschool, went to the office, reviewed case files. But her mind kept drifting back to Fletcher's face when she'd confirmed she'd been pregnant. The shock, the regret, the beginning of understanding what he'd done. Her phone rang. Paige Morrison. Kendall answered. Yes? You're not going to believe this, Paige said, her voice tight. Fletcher Grayson just called me directly. He wants to settle the Zhang case. Full disclosure of all assets. Fair division. He's capitulating completely. Kendall sat up straighter. What? Why? He said, and I quote, I've already destroyed one woman's life with my arrogance. I won't do it again. Paige paused. Kendall, what happened in that deposition? I did my job, Kendall said carefully. He asked about you. Asked if you were married, if you had children, where you'd been for the past 3 years. I told him it was none of his business, but he seemed, Paige searched for the word, desperate to know. Let him wonder, Kendall said coldly. The Zhang settlement is what matters. Get it in writing. Already drafting it. Paige hesitated. Kendall, I've known you for 2 years. I've never seen you rattled by opposing counsel. But yesterday, you were different. Do you have history with Grayson? Kendall was quiet for a long moment. He's my ex-husband. The phone line went silent. Then Paige said, The ex-husband? The one who threw you out while you were pregnant? Yes. Holy hell, Paige breathed. No wonder you destroyed him in that deposition. I'm surprised you didn't go for his throat. I'm a professional, Kendall said. My personal feelings don't interfere with my work. Still, Paige said, that took incredible strength. Are you okay? I'm fine, Kendall lied. Just send me the settlement draft when it's ready. After hanging up, Kendall stared at her computer screen without seeing it. Fletcher was settling, giving his client's wife everything she deserved. Because of what Kendall had said, because he finally understood he'd destroyed an innocent woman 3 years ago. Part of her felt vindicated. Part of her felt empty. Revenge was supposed to feel better than this. Her office phone rang again. She almost didn't answer. Then she saw the caller ID, Little Scholars Preschool. Her blood went cold. She grabbed the phone. This is Kendall Rhodes. Miss Rhodes, this is Director Patterson. You need to come to the school immediately. Quinn had an accident on the playground. Kendall's world narrowed to a single point. Is he okay? Is he conscious? He fell from the climbing structure. We've called an ambulance. He's conscious but crying, and his arm looks broken. We've also called the other emergency contact listed on his form. Kendall was already grabbing her keys. What other emergency contact? I'm the only one listed. There's a Fletcher Grayson listed as father. The form must have been updated. Director Patterson sounded confused. We called him as well. I never updated that form, Kendall said, her mind racing. Director Patterson, do not let anyone take my children. Do you understand? No one but me. Of course, Ms. Rhodes. The ambulance is almost here. We'll transport Quinn to Seattle Children's Hospital. I'm on my way, Kendall said. She hung up and ran. The drive to the hospital was a blur of traffic and terror. Quinn. Her adventurous, fearless Quinn. How badly was he hurt? Who had added Fletcher's name to the emergency contact form? How did Fletcher even know the boys existed? Unless someone had told him. But who? The only people who knew were Zara and Paige, and neither of them would betray her. Kendall's phone rang. Zara. She answered on Bluetooth. Zara, I'm heading to Children's Hospital. Quinn fell at school. I know. The school called me too. I'm grabbing Oliver, Parker, and Ryan right now. I'll meet you at the hospital. Thank you, Kendall said, her voice breaking. He's going to be okay, Zara said firmly. Quinn's tough. They all are. They're your sons. At Seattle Children's Hospital, Kendall abandoned her car in the emergency lot and ran inside. A nurse directed her to the pediatric emergency bay. She pushed through the doors and saw Quinn on a bed, his little face streaked with tears, his right arm bent at an unnatural angle. Mama, Quinn sobbed when he saw her. I'm here, baby. I'm here. Kendall gathered him carefully, avoiding his injured arm. Her heart shattered at his pain. You're so brave. You're going to be okay. It hurts, Mama. I know, sweetheart. The doctors are going to fix it. I promise. A doctor approached. Miss Rhodes? I'm Dr. Anderson. Quinn has a clean fracture of the radius. We need to set the bone and cast it. We'll give him pain medication first, but he'll need to be sedated briefly for the procedure. Do what you need to do, Kendall said. Just help him. As the medical team prepared Quinn, Kendall stepped into the waiting room to check on the other boys. Zara was there with Oliver, Parker, and Ryan. All 3 boys looked frightened. Mama, Oliver ran to her. Is Quinn gonna die? Kendall knelt down, gathering all 3 boys. No, sweetheart. Quinn broke his arm, but the doctors are fixing it right now. He's going to be fine. It was scary, Parker said quietly, his eyes wide. He was crying a lot. Will it hurt forever? Ryan asked, his lip trembling. Just for a little while, Kendall promised. Then it will heal and be good as new, like when you fix your toys. Can we see him? Oliver asked. Soon, baby. Let the doctors help him first. She was so focused on comforting her sons that she didn't notice the man entering the waiting room until Oliver suddenly pointed. "Mama, who's that?" Kendall turned. Her blood froze. Fletcher stood in the doorway. His eyes moved from Kendall to the three identical boys clustered around her. Boys with gray eyes. Boys with a distinctive cleft chin that marked Fletcher's own face. Boys who looked exactly like the photos of Fletcher as a child. The waiting room went silent. Other patients stared. A nurse stopped mid-stride. Zara stood up slowly, positioning herself protectively near the boys. "Kendall," Fletcher breathed. "What? Who are these?" Kendall stood, her voice sharp. "You need to leave. Now." But Fletcher was stepping closer, unable to look away from Oliver, Parker, and Ryan. "Those boys," he said, "they look exactly like me." Oliver, social and fearless as always, walked right up to Fletcher. He tilted his head, studying the stranger. "You do have eyes like us," Oliver said. "Are you our daddy?" The question hung in the air like a bomb. Kendall's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst. Every person in the waiting room was watching. This was the nightmare scenario she'd feared for 3 years. Fletcher, face to face with his sons, the truth impossible to deny. "What's your name?" Fletcher asked Oliver, his voice rough. "I'm Oliver." Oliver pointed to his brothers. "That's Parker and Ryan. Our brother Quinn is getting his arm fixed because he fell off the big climbing thing at school." "Quinn," Fletcher repeated. His eyes shot to Kendall's. "There are 4 of them?" Kendall grabbed Oliver's hand and pulled him back toward her. "Boys, go with Aunt Zara. Now." "But Mama," Oliver protested. "Now," Kendall said firmly. Zara quickly ushered the 3 boys toward the vending machines, far enough away to be safe but close enough to watch. Kendall turned to face Fletcher, her body between him and her children. "You need to leave," she said, her voice low and furious. "Kendall," Fletcher's eyes were wild, "those boys. They're mine, aren't they? They're my sons." "They're my sons," Kendall corrected. "You lost any right to them the night you threw me out." Fletcher's face had gone pale. "How many? How many children?" Kendall lifted her chin. 4. Quadruplets. The pregnancy I tried to tell you about that night. The one you called a lie. 4, Fletcher repeated, looking like he'd been punched. "You were carrying 4 babies? And you never told me." Kendall's control snapped. Her voice rose, drawing more stares. "I tried to tell you. You wouldn't listen. You chose to believe Adriana's lies over me. You threw me out in the rain while I was pregnant with quadruplets and called me a fraud. What exactly was I supposed to do? Come crawling back so you could reject my children to their faces? I didn't know." Fletcher said desperately, "If I'd known there were 4 babies, if I'd known—" "You would have what? Believed me?" Kendall laughed bitterly. "You didn't believe me when I told you I was pregnant with 1 baby. Why would 4 make a difference? The problem wasn't the number, Fletcher. The problem was you didn't trust me. You didn't love me enough to give me 5 minutes to explain." "Ms. Rhodes?" A nurse appeared. "Quinn is ready to see you. We've set the bone and he's waking up from sedation." Kendall took a breath, forcing herself to calm. "Thank you. I'll be right there." She turned back to Fletcher. "I need to be with my son." "You need to leave." "Kendall, please," Fletcher said. "Those are my sons too. I have rights." "You have no rights," Kendall said, her voice like ice. "You gave up any claim to these children 3 years ago. They don't know you. They don't need you. And I will not let you hurt them the way you hurt me." "I would never hurt them," Fletcher said. "You already did," Kendall replied. "Every time they ask about their father and I have to tell them he chose not to be part of our lives, that's you hurting them. Every time they see other kids with dads and wonder what's wrong with them that their dad didn't stay, that's you hurting them. You don't get to waltz in now and play father. You lost that privilege." Oliver had broken away from Zara and run back to Kendall. He tugged on her sleeve. "Mama, is he really our daddy?" Kendall looked down at her son's hopeful face, then up at Fletcher's devastated expression. She wanted to lie, wanted to protect her boys from this man who'd thrown them away before they existed. But she'd built her entire life on truth, on integrity, on being better than the people who'd hurt her. "Yes," she said quietly. "He's your biological father." Oliver's face lit up. He turned to Fletcher. "Why haven't you visited us before? Were you on a trip?" "Mama says people go on trips sometimes." Fletcher knelt down slowly until he was eye level with Oliver. His hands were shaking. "I made a very big mistake," he said, his voice rough. "I wasn't there when you were born. I should have been, but I made a mistake. I'm so sorry." "Everybody makes mistakes," Oliver said generously. "Mama says mistakes are how we learn." "Your mama is very smart," Fletcher said. "What else does your mama say?" "She says we're special 'cause there's 4 of us. We're quadrupedals." "Quadruplets," Kendall corrected softly despite herself. Parker had approached cautiously, studying Fletcher with serious eyes. "You have our chin," he observed, pointing to Fletcher's distinctive cleft. "And you have mine," Fletcher said, touching his own chin. "All 4 of you do." Ryan came next, the emotional one. His eyes filled with tears. "Are you going to stay this time? 'Cause I don't want you to leave again." The question destroyed Fletcher. Kendall watched him close his eyes briefly, struggling with emotion. When he opened them, they were wet. "I want to stay," Fletcher said, "if your mama will let me. But that's her decision, not mine. I have to earn the right to be in your lives." "Miss Rhodes," the nurse called again. "Quinn is asking for you." "I need to go," Kendall said. She looked at Fletcher. "We're not done with this conversation, but right now, my son needs me." "Can I?" Fletcher hesitated. "Can I see him? Just for a moment?" Every instinct screamed at Kendall to say no, to protect her children from this man who'd rejected them. But she looked at Oliver's excited face, Parker's curious expression, Ryan's hopeful eyes, and she thought about Quinn, lying in a hospital bed, who deserved the same chance to meet his father that his brothers just had. 5 minutes, she said. That's all. She led Fletcher through the emergency department to Quinn's bay. Quinn was awake, his right arm now encased in a bright blue cast. His face was still tear-stained, but the pain medication had clearly helped. "Quinn," Kendall said gently, "there's someone here who wants to meet you." Fletcher stepped into Quinn's line of sight. Quinn's eyes widened. "You look like us," he said. "Like me and Oliver and Parker and Ryan." "I do," Fletcher agreed. His voice was thick with emotion. "I'm your father, Quinn." Quinn processed this. "My arm hurts," he said. "I know, buddy. I'm so sorry you're hurt." "The doctor says I get to have a cast for 6 whole weeks," Quinn said, his natural enthusiasm breaking through the pain, "and everyone can draw on it." "Do you want to draw on it?" Fletcher looked at Kendall, asking permission. She nodded once. "I'd be honored," Fletcher said. A nurse brought a marker. Fletcher carefully wrote on Quinn's cast, "To the bravest boy I know. Love, Dad." Quinn beamed. "That's good writing. Mama, did you see the good writing?" "I saw, sweetheart," Kendall said. Her throat was tight with emotions she couldn't name. Fletcher stayed exactly 5 minutes. He said goodbye to Quinn, promising to visit again if Mama said it was okay. Then he followed Kendall back to the waiting room where Oliver, Parker, and Ryan immediately swarmed him with questions. "Do you live far away? Do you have a dog? Can you come to our house? Do you like dinosaurs?" Fletcher answered each question patiently, kneeling so he was at their eye level. "No dog, but I like them. I'd love to visit if your mama allows it. And yes, dinosaurs are very cool." Finally, Kendall intervened. "Boys, we need to let Fletcher go now, and we need to wait for Quinn to be discharged." "Do we have to?" Oliver asked. "We just met our dad." "I know, baby. But he'll—" Kendall looked at Fletcher, forcing the words out. "He'll visit again. Soon. We'll figure out a schedule." "Really, Mama?" Ryan asked hopefully. "He can come back." "Really," Kendall confirmed, though the word cost her. Fletcher stood slowly. "Thank you," he said to Kendall, "for letting me meet them." "We'll need to discuss this properly," Kendall said. "Legal arrangements, visitation schedules, everything official." "I understand," Fletcher said. "Kendall, I know I don't deserve this. I know I have no right to ask. But please, give me a chance to know them, to be their father." "One chance," Kendall said firmly. "You get one chance, Fletcher. If you hurt them, if you disappoint them, if you walk away when things get hard, there won't be a second one. Do you understand?" "I understand," Fletcher said. "I won't let them down. Or you." "We'll see," Kendall said coldly. Fletcher left the hospital walking like a man in shock. Kendall returned to Quinn's bay and held her son's good hand while they waited for discharge papers. "Mama," Quinn said quietly. Is our dad nice? Kendall thought about Fletcher's gentleness with the boys, the way he did knelt to their level, the care he'd taken riding on Quinn's cast. Then she thought about the man who'd thrown her out in the rain, who had believed lies without question, who'd destroyed their marriage. I don't know yet, she said honestly, but we're going to find out. That evening, after all 4 boys were finally asleep in their beds, Quinn, with his blue cast propped carefully on a pillow, Kendall collapsed on her couch. Zara sat beside her with 2 glasses of wine. That was the most dramatic hospital visit I've ever witnessed, Zara said. And I once saw a woman give birth in the parking lot. Kendall laughed despite everything. It was awful. The boys seemed happy to meet him. That's what I'm afraid of, Kendall admitted. What if they bond with him and he leaves? What if he decides being a father to quadruplets is too hard and walks away? They'll be devastated. Or, Zara said carefully, what if he actually steps up? What if he's a good father? Then I'll have to co-parent with the man who destroyed me, Kendall said. Do you know how hard that will be? Seeing him regularly? Sharing my children? Harder than raising quadruplets alone? Zara asked gently. Kendall was quiet. Nothing had been harder than those first 2 years. The exhaustion, the fear, the constant struggle. If Fletcher genuinely helped, if he truly became a present father, it would make her life easier. But it would also mean trusting him again. And trust, once shattered, was almost impossible to rebuild. Her phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. She opened it. This is Fletcher. I got your number from the preschool emergency contact form. I know you're probably angry about that. I'm sorry. But Kendall, seeing them today, seeing our sons, I have no words. They're perfect. All 4 of them. Thank you for letting me meet them. I meant what I said. I won't let them down. I know I don't deserve your trust, but I'm going to earn it. However long it takes. F. Kendall read the message 3 times. Then she typed a response. We need to meet. Tomorrow. Just us. To discuss how this is going to work. His response came immediately. Anytime. Anywhere. Name the place. Bluebird Cafe. 7 a.m. Come alone. I'll be there. Kendall set down her phone. 7 a.m. Neutral territory. A public place where she wouldn't break down or lose control. Where they could have the conversation that would determine how the next 15 years of their lives would unfold. Because like it or not, Fletcher was the father of her children. And those children deserved the chance to know him. Deserved to see if he could be the man he claimed he wanted to be. She just had to protect her heart while giving him access to theirs. And that, Kendall thought, might be the hardest thing she'd ever done. Tomorrow would change everything. Again. But this time, Kendall wasn't the powerless woman standing in the rain. She was a lawyer, a mother, a survivor. And whatever came next, she would face it on her own terms. Fletcher might be the father of her children, but he would never again have the power to destroy her. The Bluebird Cafe sat on a quiet corner in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood, known for strong coffee and early morning crowds of professionals. Kendall arrived at 6:50 a.m., 10 minutes early. She ordered black coffee and sat at a corner table where she could see the door. Her stomach churned with anxiety, despite the professional armor she'd worn. Tailored gray suit, hair pulled back severely, the red lipstick that made her feel powerful. Fletcher walked in at exactly 7 o'clock. He looked like he hadn't slept, dark circles under his eyes, his usually perfect hair slightly disheveled. He spotted her immediately and approached the table with the caution of someone approaching a wild animal. Thank you for meeting me, he said, sitting across from her. We need ground rules, Kendall said without preamble. If you're going to be in their lives, we do this properly, legally, with clear boundaries. Fletcher nodded. I agree. Whatever you want. Kendall pulled out a folder. I drafted a preliminary visitation agreement last night. Supervised visits only, 3 times per week, at my apartment or a public location. 2 hours maximum. You will not take them anywhere without my explicit permission. You will not make any major decisions about their lives, education, health, or welfare without consulting me first. You will not introduce them to any romantic partners without 6 months' notice and my approval. Fletcher read through the document carefully. This is fair. More than fair. He looked up. But Kendall, supervised visits? You really think I'd hurt them? I think you're a stranger to them, Kendall said evenly. And to me, honestly, the Fletcher I married wouldn't have thrown me out in the rain. I don't know who you are now. So yes, supervised visits until I'm confident you're safe and reliable. How long until you'll be confident? That depends entirely on you, Kendall said. Show up when you say you will. Be consistent. Put their needs first. Prove you're not going to disappear when being a father gets inconvenient. Fletcher set down the document. I deserve that. All of it. He ran his hand through his hair, that familiar gesture. Kendall, I know this doesn't change anything, but I need you to understand something. When I found out what Adriana had done, when I realized I'd thrown away my marriage over lies, I was destroyed. I spent 2 years looking for you. I hired 3 different private investigators. I checked every hospital in Oregon and Washington, every women's shelter. I thought maybe you'd gone back to your hometown in California, so I flew there and searched for weeks. Why? Kendall asked. What did you think would happen if you found me? I wanted to apologize, Fletcher said simply, to tell you I was wrong, to try to make amends. I never imagined, he paused. I never imagined there were children. 4 children. If I'd known you were pregnant, Kendall, I would have torn apart the entire country to find you. But you didn't know, Kendall said, because you wouldn't listen. And that's the point, Fletcher. You made a choice that night. You chose to believe lies over me. You chose your pride over our marriage. You chose to be exactly like your father, the man you claimed to hate. Fletcher flinched like she'd struck him. You're right. I became exactly what I feared. My father left my mother without a word when I was 5. Just disappeared. Left her to raise me alone, struggling with every bill, every decision. I promised myself I'd never be like him, never abandon my family. But when you told me you were pregnant, all I could think about was how terrified I was of failing, of being a bad father. So I pushed you away before I could disappoint you. So you preemptively failed, Kendall said. Congratulations. You became your father faster than he did. I know, Fletcher said quietly, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But Kendall, those boys, our sons, they're incredible. In the 10 minutes I spent with them yesterday, I saw it. Oliver's confidence, Parker's intelligence, Quinn's courage, Ryan's empathy. You've raised them to be amazing. I raised them to survive, Kendall corrected. To be strong despite having a father who didn't want them. I did want them, Fletcher said desperately. I just didn't know they existed. And now that I do, I want to be part of their lives. I want to be the father they deserve. Please, Kendall, give me that chance. Kendall studied his face, looking for any hint of deception or ulterior motive. She'd learned to read people over the past 3 years, learned to spot liars and manipulators. Fletcher looked sincere, desperate, broken. But sincerity didn't erase the past, and desperation didn't guarantee follow-through. Sign the agreement, she said. We'll start with 3 supervised visits per week. After 3 months, we'll reassess. If you've been consistent and the boys are comfortable, we can discuss unsupervised visits. 3 months, Fletcher repeated. That's a long time. It took you 6 months to figure out Adriana was lying, Kendall said. 3 months to prove you can show up for your children seems reasonable in comparison. Fletcher pulled out a pen and signed the agreement without hesitation. When can I see them again? Saturday, 10 a.m., my apartment, 2 hours. I'll be there, Fletcher promised. Thank you, Kendall, for this chance. I know I don't deserve it. You don't, Kendall agreed. But they deserve the opportunity to know their father, if you're actually capable of being one. She stood, gathering her things. Fletcher stood as well. Kendall, he said as she turned to leave. Can I ask you something? What? How did you do it? Raise quadruplets alone? Put yourself through law school? Build a career? How did you survive? Kendall looked at him directly. I didn't have a choice. You took away every other option when you threw me out. So I survived because my children needed me to. I became a lawyer because I never wanted to be powerless again. I built this life because the alternative was giving up, and I will never, ever give up on my sons. She walked out of the cafe, leaving Fletcher sitting alone at the table, holding the signed agreement that would give him access to the children he'd never known existed. In her car, Kendall allowed herself exactly 3 minutes to feel the weight of what she'd just done. She'd opened the door to Fletcher, given him permission to be part of their lives, put her children's hearts at risk of being broken by a man who'd already proven he could walk away. But she'd also given them the chance at something she'd never had. A father who might possibly step up. who might become the dad they deserved. Time would tell which version of Fletcher would show up, the man who'd thrown her away, or the man who claimed he'd changed. Saturday morning arrived too quickly. Kendall had warned the boys their father would be visiting, but she'd kept it casual, not making it a big event that would overwhelm them. "Someone special is coming to visit today," she'd said over breakfast. "Is it Grandma Loretta?" Oliver asked, referring to Loretta from the shelter who visited monthly. "No, baby. Remember the man from the hospital? Your father? He's coming to spend some time with you." The boys had reacted with typical 3-year-old excitement, asking 100 questions Kendall couldn't fully answer. "What is he like? Will he play with us? Can he stay for dinner?" At 9:55 a.m., Kendall was more nervous than she'd been for any court case. The apartment was clean, toys organized, boys dressed in their color-coded shirts. Oliver in blue, Parker in green, Quinn in yellow with his bright blue cast, Ryan in red. At exactly 10 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Kendall opened it to find Fletcher holding a bag that clinked suspiciously and looking as nervous as she felt. "Right on time," she observed. "You said 10. I've been sitting in my car since 9:45 making sure I wouldn't be late." Despite herself, Kendall almost smiled. "Come in." Fletcher entered the modest 2-bedroom apartment, his eyes taking in everything. The small kitchen with 4 high chairs, the living room dominated by toy boxes and a playmat, the wall covered in the boys' artwork. "This is nice," he said. "Homey. It's what we could afford," Kendall said, a hint of defensiveness in her voice. "I didn't mean it as criticism," Fletcher said quickly. "I meant it feels loved, like a real home." Before Kendall could respond, 4 boys came running from the bedroom where they'd been playing. "Daddy!" Oliver shouted, reaching Fletcher first. "You came back." Fletcher knelt down, and Oliver crashed into him for a hug. "I promised I would," Fletcher said, his voice thick. Parker approached more cautiously, studying Fletcher. "Did you bring something?" He pointed to the bag. "I did," Fletcher said, "but I need your mom's permission before I show you." Kendall peered into the bag. 4 identical toy trucks, each a different color. "Permission before I show you." Kendall peered into the bag. 4 identical toy trucks, each a different color. Blue, green, yellow, and red. She looked at Fletcher with surprise. "You color-coded them." "I noticed they each wore different colors at the hospital," Fletcher explained. "I figured it was your system for telling them apart, so I made sure each truck matched. It was thoughtful. More thoughtful than Kendall expected. The boys can play with them." Fletcher distributed the trucks, making sure each boy got his color. Oliver immediately started making engine noises. Parker examined his truck's mechanics. Quinn tried to make his truck climb the furniture. Ryan brought his truck to show Kendall. "Look, Mama, it's red like my shirt." "I see, baby. That was very nice of your dad." The 2 hours passed faster than Kendall expected. Fletcher sat on the floor and played cars with the boys. He asked questions about their favorite things, listened to Oliver's elaborate stories about dinosaurs fighting aliens, helped Parker build a block tower, read Quinn a story about trucks, gave Ryan extra hugs when the sensitive boy seemed overwhelmed. Kendall watched from the kitchen, pretending to work on her laptop but actually observing every interaction. Fletcher was gentle with them, patient when Oliver interrupted constantly, attentive when Parker corrected him on some fact, careful with Quinn's cast, responsive to Ryan's emotional needs. He was good with them, better than she'd feared, and that complicated everything. At noon exactly, Fletcher checked his watch. "I should go. I don't want to overstay." The boys immediately protested. "No, stay longer. We want to show you our room. Can you have lunch with us?" "I'd love to," Fletcher said, "but your mama and I agreed on 2 hours. I need to keep my promises." He looked at Kendall. "Can I come back Tuesday?" "Tuesday works," Kendall confirmed. Fletcher said individual goodbyes to each boy, learning their different preferences. High five for Oliver, fist bump for Parker, gentle hair ruffle for Quinn, big hug for Ryan. At the door, he turned to Kendall. "Thank you. For today. For letting me be here. You showed up," Kendall said. "That's step 1. Hundreds more to go. I'll be at every single one," Fletcher promised. After he left, Oliver turned to Kendall. "I like our dad. He's nice." "Me too," Quinn added. "He didn't get mad when I spilled juice on him." Parker was more analytical. He knew lots of facts about trucks. And he listened when I talked. Ryan just smiled. He gives good hugs. Kendall gathered her boys close. I'm glad you had fun. He'll visit again on Tuesday. She didn't tell them how much it hurt to watch Fletcher be the father he should have been from the beginning. Didn't tell them how conflicted she felt seeing them bond with a man who'd thrown them away before they were born. She just held them and hoped she was making the right choice. Tuesday's visit went as smoothly as Saturday's. Thursday's too. The following week, Fletcher arrived with 4 books he'd researched as age-appropriate. The week after that, he brought art supplies and spent 2 hours doing crafts with boys who inherited their mother's love of creating. 6 weeks into the supervised visits, Kendall had to admit Fletcher was being consistent. He never missed a visit, never showed up late, never cut the time short. He brought thoughtful gifts, asked about their doctor appointments, remembered details from previous conversations. The boys adored him, started talking about him constantly. Dad said this. Dad likes that. When is Dad coming back? It was everything Kendall had hoped for and feared simultaneously. Meanwhile, work provided a distraction from the complicated feelings Fletcher's presence stirred up. Kendall had taken on 3 new cases, all involving wealthy husbands hiding assets. And in all 3 cases, she noticed the same pattern she'd seen in the Jean case. Late one evening, after the boys were asleep, Kendall spread files across her dining table. She'd pulled cases going back 18 months, looking for connections. The pattern was undeniable. 7 different cases, 7 different clients, but the same methodology for concealing assets. Shell corporations in Delaware and Nevada, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland, real estate purchases buried in LLC structures. And every single case had been defended by Grayson Legal Partners. More specifically, every case had been handled by Roland Blackwood, Fletcher's managing partner. Kendall pulled up information on Blackwood. He'd joined Grayson Legal Partners 18 months ago, bringing with him several high-profile clients. Before that, he'd worked at a prestigious New York firm that had dissolved amid scandal, ethics violations, allegations of helping clients hide assets from the IRS. The pieces started falling into place. Blackwood had brought his criminal methodology to Fletcher's firm, was using Fletcher's reputation as cover for systematic fraud. The question was whether Fletcher knew. Kendall thought about the Fletcher she'd seen over the past 6 weeks. The man who played patiently with their sons, who asked thoughtful questions, who seemed genuinely committed to being a good father. That man didn't seem like someone who would knowingly participate in fraud. But she'd been wrong about Fletcher before. She made copies of everything and locked them in her office safe. Then she did something that surprised her. She texted Fletcher, "Can we talk? Not about the boys. About work. It's important." His response came within minutes. "Of course. When?" "Tomorrow. After your visit with the boys. They'll be at Zara's for a play date. I'll stay." The next day's visit was typical chaos. Fletcher had brought ingredients to make homemade Play-Doh, and all 5 of them ended up covered in flour. The boys loved it. Kendall found herself laughing genuinely for the first time in weeks. At noon, Zara picked up the boys for their playdate. After they left, an awkward silence filled the apartment. Fletcher stood uncertainly in the kitchen. "Should I make coffee?" He offered. "I'll do it," Kendall said. "You can sit." They sat at the small kitchen table, coffee between them. Fletcher waited patiently for Kendall to begin. "I've been investigating a pattern across multiple cases," Kendall said. "All involving hidden assets, all using the same illegal methodology, all defended by your firm." Fletcher's expression shifted from casual to serious. "What kind of methodology?" Kendall pulled out her copies and showed him. "Shell corporations here, here, and here. Offshore accounts with these routing numbers. Real estate buried in these LLC structures. It's systematic, Fletcher. Someone at your firm is helping wealthy men commit fraud." Fletcher studied the documents, his face growing darker. "These are all Roland's cases." "Roland Blackwood? Your managing partner?" "Yes. He joined 18 months ago. Brought several high-profile clients with him." Fletcher looked up. "Kendall, I had no idea. I've been so focused on building the Seattle office, on the cases I handle personally, I didn't scrutinize his methods." "Did you authorize these corporate structures?" "No," Fletcher said firmly. "My signature isn't on any of these filings." He flipped through the pages. "Roland has signing authority as managing partner. I trusted him to handle his cases ethically." "Fletcher," Kendall said carefully, If this is happening, you have a legal and ethical obligation to report it. This isn't just civil fraud. This is criminal activity, tax evasion, money laundering. Reporting it would destroy my firm, Fletcher said quietly. Everything I've built over the past 8 years. Is your firm worth more than your integrity? Kendall asked. Fletcher was silent for a long moment. Then he looked at her directly. 3 months ago, I would have said yes. I would have found a way to protect the firm, protect my reputation. But you asked me what changed. He gestured around the apartment. This changed, meeting our sons, seeing what you've built on truth and hard work, while I built my success on a foundation that's apparently corrupt. I don't want to be that person anymore. So what are you going to do? I'm going to investigate, Fletcher said. Quietly, gather evidence, and if Roland is doing what you've found, I'm going to report him to the state bar and cooperate with any criminal investigation, even if it destroys Grayson Legal Partners. Kendall studied his face. You're serious. Completely, Fletcher said. You know what you said at the cafe? About me becoming my father? You were right. I abandoned my family to build a career. But I'm done making that choice. Our sons deserve a father with integrity, even if he's broke and unemployed. Despite everything, despite all the hurt and anger, Kendall felt something shift inside her. This was the man she'd fallen in love with 7 years ago, the one who'd talked about building things that mattered, about legacy and honor. She'd thought that man was dead, killed by ambition and Adriana's manipulation. Maybe he'd just been buried, and maybe he was finally clawing his way back to the surface. I have more documentation if you need it, Kendall offered. I've been tracking these patterns for weeks. Why are you helping me? Fletcher asked. You could let me go down with the firm. It would be poetic justice. Because it's the right thing to do, Kendall said. And because our sons are watching. They need to see both of us do the right thing, even when it's hard. Fletcher reached across the table, then stopped himself before touching her hand. Thank you. For this, for everything. Don't thank me yet, Kendall said. If you're really going to do this, it's going to get ugly. Roland won't go down quietly. Your clients will abandon you. Your reputation will take a hit. I know, Fletcher said, but I'd rather rebuild with a clean conscience than maintain success built on lies. After Fletcher left, Kendall sat in her quiet apartment and wondered what she'd just set in motion. She'd given Fletcher the ammunition to destroy his own career, had helped him because it was right, not because she owed him anything. But she'd also seen something in his eyes that scared her. Determination, integrity, the qualities she'd once loved about him. She couldn't afford to fall for Fletcher Grayson again, couldn't risk her heart on a man who'd shattered it once before. But Keo parenting was pushing them together constantly, and the more time she spent with him, the harder it became to remember why she'd built those walls in the first place. Over the next 3 weeks, Fletcher divided his time between visiting his sons and secretly investigating Roland Blackwood. He copied files, documented patterns, built an irrefutable case of systematic fraud. His visits with the boys continued like clockwork. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. 2 hours each time. But the boys started asking why he couldn't stay longer, why he couldn't live with them like other dads. Kendall found herself asking the same question, though she'd never admit it out loud. The 12-week mark of supervised visits arrived. Fletcher showed up for his regular Saturday visit, but Kendall could see the tension in his shoulders. Can we talk after? He asked quietly while the boys played. About? I'm filing the complaint against Roland on Monday. I wanted you to know first. After Zara picked up the boys for another playdate, Fletcher showed Kendall everything he'd compiled. Emails, financial documents, client communications. The evidence was damning. This will hold up in court, Kendall said, reviewing the files. Roland will likely face criminal charges. I know, Fletcher said. My lawyer says the firm will probably be dissolved. Assets frozen during the investigation. I'll be unemployed within a month. What will you do? Start over, Fletcher said with a shrug. Maybe solo practice. Pro bono work. I've been researching legal aid organizations that need experienced attorneys. The pay is terrible, but the work matters. Kendall looked at him with surprise. You're going to do legal aid? Why not? Fletcher said. I've spent 8 years making rich people richer. Maybe it's time to actually help people who need it. People like you did when I threw you out. The comparison hung in the air between them. Fletcher, Kendall said carefully, I've been thinking. The boys have been asking why you don't stay longer, why you can't come to dinner. And honestly, You've proven yourself over the past 3 months. You've been consistent, reliable, good with them. I think we can move to unsupervised visits." Fletcher's face lit up. "Really? Really?" Kendall confirmed. "We'll draft a new agreement. More flexible schedule. You can take them to the park, out for meals, to your place once you have it set up safely for kids. But Fletcher, if you mess this up, if you disappoint them, we go right back to supervised." "I won't mess up," Fletcher promised. "I swear." Kendall pulled out her laptop and started drafting the new agreement. As she typed, Fletcher watched her. "You've changed so much," he said quietly. "You're stronger than you were, more confident." "I had to be," Kendall replied, without looking up. 4 children depending on me doesn't leave room for weakness. I'm proud of you. For everything you've accomplished." Kendall finally looked at him. Don't what? Don't say things like that. Don't make this more complicated than it already is." "Kendall, I'm just being honest." "I know," Kendall said. "And that's the problem. Because every time you're kind, every time you're good with the boys, every time you do the right thing, it gets harder to remember why I can't trust you." "You can trust me," Fletcher said. "Can I?" Kendall challenged. 3 months ago, you didn't even know they existed. 6 months from now, when being a father gets inconvenient, when your career demands more time, when some new crisis emerges, what then? Will you still show up? Or will you find reasons to cancel visits, to drift away, to become the absent father you swore you'd never be?" "I will show up," Fletcher said firmly. "Kendall, I know I can't undo what I did. I can't give you back the 3 years I stole. But I can promise you this. Those boys are the most important thing in my life now. More important than my career, my reputation, anything. I will show up for them until the day I die." Kendall wanted to believe him. But belief required trust, and trust required proof. 3 months of consistent visits was a good start, but it wasn't enough to heal 3 years of abandonment. "Prove it," she said. "Keep proving it. Every day, every week, every year. Maybe eventually I'll believe you." "I will," Fletcher promised. The following Monday, Fletcher filed his complaint with the Washington State Bar Association. By Tuesday afternoon, the legal community was buzzing. By Wednesday, Roland Blackwood's office had been raided by federal investigators. By Friday, Grayson Legal Partners had announced they were dissolving the firm pending investigation. Fletcher's phone rang constantly with former clients, angry and confused. His professional reputation took an immediate hit, but he handled it with grace, referring clients to other ethical attorneys, cooperating fully with investigators, taking full responsibility for his failure to oversee Blackwood's activities. Kendall watched it all from a distance, grudgingly impressed. Fletcher was sacrificing everything he'd built, and he was doing it without complaint, without trying to salvage his reputation at others' expense. On Saturday, Fletcher arrived for his visit looking exhausted, but somehow lighter. "How are you?" Kendall asked. "Unemployed," Fletcher said with a wry smile. "Probably unhirable for the foreseeable future. Potentially facing a formal reprimand from the Bar Association, but surprisingly okay." The boys ran to greet him, oblivious to their father's professional implosion. They just cared that Dad was here, ready to play, ready to give them attention. "Can we go to the park?" Oliver asked. "You said when Mama said it was okay, we could go places." Kendall nodded. "The park is fine. But Fletcher, they need to be back by 6 for dinner. What if we all went to dinner after?" Fletcher suggested. "My treat. There's a family restaurant near the park with a play area." Kendall hesitated. The boys would love it, but dinner together felt dangerously domestic, like something an actual family would do. "Please, Mama," Ryan said, his eyes wide. "We never go to restaurants." The guilt hit hard. Kendall had been so focused on surviving, on building stability, that she rarely splurged on things like restaurant dinners. "Okay," she agreed, "but nowhere expensive. The boys will make a mess." "That's what kids do," Fletcher said. "I'm okay with mess now." At the park, Kendall sat on a bench while Fletcher played with the quadruplets. He pushed them on swings, helped them across monkey bars, caught them at the bottom of slides. Other parents watched with curiosity, counting heads, doing the math. "Quadruplets," one mother approached Kendall. "Are all 4 boys yours?" "Yes," Kendall confirmed. "Quadruplets?" The woman looked amazed. "And you're here without help? You're brave." "Their father is here," Kendall pointed to Fletcher, who currently had Quinn on his shoulders while the other 3 boys hung off his arms. "You have a good partner," the woman observed. "My husband won't even take our 1 kid to the park alone." Kendall almost corrected her, almost explained that Fletcher wasn't her partner, just her CO parent. But something stopped her. Maybe the way Fletcher was laughing as the boys tackled him. Maybe the way Oliver was showing him how high he could climb. Maybe the way Parker was explaining the physics of seesaws while Fletcher listened intently. "Yeah," Kendall said instead. "He's pretty good with them." At dinner, the boys were predictably messy. Oliver spilled his milk twice. Quinn got ketchup in his hair. Parker dissected his chicken nuggets to examine the breading. Ryan insisted on sharing bites of his food with everyone. Fletcher handled it all with patience and humor. He cleaned up spills, wiped faces, negotiated vegetable consumption with diplomatic skill. "You're good at this," Kendall observed, watching him convince Quinn that eating 3 green beans was a heroic achievement. "I'm learning," Fletcher said. He looked at her seriously. "I wish I'd been there from the beginning, to help with the hard parts." "The hard parts were all of it," Kendall said. "Newborn quadruplets in the NICU, 4 infants who cried in rotation all night. Teething times 4, potty training times 4. You missed everything, Fletcher." "I know," he said quietly, "and I'll regret that forever. But I'm here now, and I want to be here for everything going forward. First days of school, Little League, puberty, college, all of it." "Puberty times 4. Kendall couldn't help but smile. "That's going to be a nightmare." "We'll survive it," Fletcher said. Together, the word together hung between them, heavy with possibility and danger. After dinner, Fletcher drove them home in his car, which he'd outfitted, with 4 car seats in the 3 weeks since unsupervised visits began. The boys fell asleep during the drive, exhausted from the park and full of chicken nuggets. At Kendall's apartment, Fletcher carried Oliver, while Kendall took Parker. They made a second trip for Quinn and Ryan, moving through the bedtime routine with practiced coordination. Pajamas, teeth brushing, story time, goodnight kisses. By the time all 4 boys were asleep, it was nearly 9 o'clock. Fletcher should have left. The visit was long over. But Kendall found herself offering him tea. They sat at the kitchen table, the apartment finally quiet. "This was nice today," Kendall admitted. "The park, dinner, the boys loved it." "We could do it again," Fletcher suggested. "Make it a regular thing. Saturday park days." Kendall nodded slowly. "They'd like that." "How are you doing?" Fletcher asked. "With work, with everything?" "Busy," Kendall said. "I have 4 active cases right now, plus the boys, plus managing this household. It's a lot." "You're handling it alone," Fletcher observed. "Do you ever ask for help?" "From who?" Kendall asked. "Zara helps when she can, but she has her own life. My parents are in California, and not exactly supportive of the choices I've made. Loretta visits monthly, but she's not getting any younger. I'm basically on my own." "You have me now," Fletcher said. "Kendall, I know I'm just the CO parent." "I know we're not," he paused. "We're not together. But if you need help, with the boys or anything else, I want to help." "Why?" Kendall asked. "Why do you want to help me?" "You're already seeing the boys. You don't owe me anything." "Because you're the mother of my children," Fletcher said. "Because you did something extraordinary, raising them alone. Because I owe you 3 years of support you never got. And because," he hesitated, "because I still care about you, Kendall." "Don't," Kendall said, standing abruptly. "Don't go there, Fletcher. I'm sorry." Fletcher stood too. "You're right. That was inappropriate. I should go." "Yes," Kendall said. "You should." But as Fletcher gathered his jacket, Quinn called out from the bedroom. "Dad? Daddy, are you still here?" Fletcher looked at Kendall for permission. She nodded. He went to Quinn's room and found the little boy sitting up in bed, his blue cast glowing slightly in the nightlight. "I'm here, buddy," Fletcher said, sitting on the edge of Quinn's bed. "Bad dream?" "No," Quinn said. "I just wanted to make sure you didn't leave yet." "I was just about to," Fletcher admitted. "But I'll be back on Tuesday. I promise." "Why can't you stay?" Quinn asked. The question every child of divorce eventually asks. "Why can't you live here with us and Mama?" Fletcher's heart clenched. "It's complicated, Quinn. Your Mama and we're not married anymore." "Why not?" "Because I made a very big mistake a long time ago," Fletcher said honestly. "And sometimes mistakes can't be fixed." "Mama says mistakes are how we learn," Quinn said. Did you learn? I did, Fletcher said. I learned that I should have listened better, that I should have trusted more, that I should have fought harder for the people I love. Do you love us? Quinn asked. Very much, Fletcher said. You and Oliver and Parker and Ryan. I love all of you so much. Do you love Mama? Fletcher was quiet for a moment. Yes, he finally said. I do. But love isn't always enough to fix things that are broken. Oh, Quinn processed this. Well, I love you, Dad. I love you too, Quinn. Now lie back down. You need sleep. After Quinn settled, Fletcher returned to the kitchen where Kendall had clearly been listening. I'm sorry, he said. He asked a direct question. I tried to answer age-appropriately. You told him you love me, Kendall said flatly. I told him the truth, Fletcher replied. I do love you, Kendall. I never stopped, but I respect that you don't feel the same way. I won't bring it up again. Good, Kendall said, because this isn't about us. It's about them. I know, Fletcher said. He moved toward the door. Good night, Kendall. After he left, Kendall leaned against the closed door, her heart pounding. Fletcher still loved her, had never stopped loving her. The information should have made her angry. Should have felt like manipulation. Instead, it just made everything more complicated. Because somewhere in the past 3 months, between watching him play with their sons and seeing him sacrifice his career for integrity, her walls had started to crack. The armor she'd built was developing fissures, and she was terrified of what would happen if it shattered completely. The Bar Association hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday. Fletcher asked Kendall if she would come, not as his lawyer, but as support. She hesitated, then agreed. Zara watched the boys. The hearing room was packed. Journalists, attorneys, curious observers. Everyone wanted to see Fletcher Grayson's downfall. Kendall sat in the back, trying to be invisible. Fletcher took the stand and systematically detailed everything. Roland Blackwood's scheme, the hidden assets, the criminal methodology, his own failure to supervise properly. And you had no knowledge of these activities? The examiner asked skeptically. I didn't want to know, Fletcher answered honestly. I was so focused on expansion, on success, that I didn't ask the right questions. I saw the revenue Blackwood brought in and didn't scrutinize his methods. That's my failure. I take full responsibility. You understand this testimony will result in criminal charges against Mr. Blackwood? Yes. And that your firm will be dissolved? Yes. Why are you doing this, Mr. Grayson? Why destroy everything you've built? Fletcher was quiet for a moment. His eyes found Kendall's in the crowd, because 3 years ago I believed a lie instead of trusting the woman I loved. I destroyed my marriage, lost my family, and spent years living a life built on false foundations. I'm done making that choice. I'm done choosing success over integrity. Whatever the consequences, the truth matters more. The hearing lasted 6 hours. In the end, Roland Blackwood's license was suspended pending criminal investigation. Fletcher received a formal reprimand but kept his license based on his cooperation and testimony. Grayson Legal Partners was officially dissolved. Outside the building, reporters swarmed. Fletcher handled their questions with grace. Yes, he'd lost his firm. No, he wasn't angry. Yes, he'd do it again. Integrity mattered more than reputation. Kendall waited until the crowd dispersed, then approached. You did good in there. I told the truth, Fletcher said. Finally. What will you do now? I've been offered a position at Northwest Legal Aid, Fletcher said. It's a pay cut of about 90% from what I was making. But the work matters. Helping people who actually need help. Your sons will be proud, Kendall said. When they're old enough to understand. I hope so, Fletcher said. He looked at her intently. Thank you for coming today. It meant a lot to see you there. The boys need to see both their parents doing the right thing, Kendall said, deflecting the intimacy of the moment. Is that the only reason you came? Kendall met his eyes. I came because you asked me to. Don't read more into it than that. But as she walked away, Kendall knew she was lying. She'd come because some part of her, the part she'd tried to bury for 3 years, still cared about Fletcher Grayson. Still wanted to support him when he was doing the hard right thing. And that terrified her more than anything. 3 weeks after the hearing on a random Thursday evening, Kendall was putting the boys to bed when she felt a wave of nausea. She barely made it to the bathroom before getting sick. Just stress, she told herself. The Zhang settlement had finally gone through. She had 2 new complex cases. Fletcher's presence in their lives had disrupted the routine she'd carefully built. Of course, her stomach was upset, but the nausea continued for 3 days, then a week. She was exhausted beyond her usual tiredness. Her coffee tasted wrong. Certain smells made her gag. Finally, Zara confronted her. "When was your last period?" Kendall froze. She couldn't remember. Between work stress and Keo parenting negotiations, she hadn't been tracking. "I don't know. A while ago?" "How long is a while?" Kendall pulled up her period tracking app. The last entry was 10 weeks ago. 10 weeks. "Oh God. You need to take a test," Zara said firmly. "I can't be pregnant," Kendall protested. "There's no way." "I haven't." She stopped. Actually, there was one night, 8 weeks ago. After a particularly emotional conversation about the boys' future, Fletcher had walked her to her car after the boys were asleep. The rain had started. They'd both laughed at the irony, rain bringing them together again instead of tearing them apart. Somehow, they'd ended up in the back seat of her car like teenagers. It had been desperate and passionate and a terrible idea. They'd both agreed afterward never to speak of it again. "Oh no," Kendall whispered. No. Zara went to the pharmacy and returned with 3 pregnancy tests. Kendall took all 3. All 3 showed 2 pink lines. Pregnant. Again. With Fletcher's child. Again. "This can't be happening," Kendall said, staring at the tests. "I have 4 3-year-olds. I can't have another baby." "You need to see a doctor," Zara said practically. "Get confirmation. Figure out your options." The next day, Kendall sat in Dr. Rebecca Wilson's office, the same doctor who'd confirmed her quadruplet pregnancy 4 years ago. Dr. Wilson reviewed the ultrasound screen, her expression carefully neutral. "Well," she said, "you're definitely pregnant, about 10 weeks along." Kendall nodded numbly. "Just one this time, right? Please tell me it's just one." Dr. Wilson adjusted the ultrasound wand. "Actually, I'm seeing 3 distinct gestational sacs." Kendall's vision went blurry. 3 triplets, Dr. Wilson confirmed. Non-identical this time, but yes, 3 babies. Kendall started laughing. Hysterical, borderline manic laughter. Of course I'm having triplets. Because 4 children wasn't enough chaos. Given your history with quadruplets, Dr. Wilson said gently, this will be considered extremely high risk. You'll need specialized monitoring, probable bed rest, likely early delivery. "I can't do bed rest," Kendall protested. "I have 4 toddlers and a full-time job." "Then you need to build a support system immediately," Dr. Wilson said, "because without proper care, you risk premature labor and serious complications." "Kendall, you've done this before. You know the risks." Kendall drove home in a daze. 7 children. She was going to have 7 children total. 4 3-year-olds and 3 new babies. How was that even possible? More importantly, how was she going to tell Fletcher? She waited until Saturday, after his visit with the boys. After they were at Zara's for a play date, she asked Fletcher to stay, her stomach churning with anxiety. "Is everything okay?" Fletcher asked, noticing her tension. "Did I do something wrong with the boys?" "No," Kendall said. "They're fine. You're fine. It's just..." She took a breath. "Fletcher, I need to tell you something, and I don't know how you're going to react." "Okay," Fletcher said slowly. "I'm listening. I'm pregnant." Fletcher went very still. His face cycled through emotions too quickly to name. "Pregnant," he repeated. 10 weeks. From that night, you know the night. In the car, "I remember," Fletcher said quietly. "There's more," Kendall said. "It's not just one baby. It's 3. Triplets." Fletcher blinked. 3 babies. "Yes, in addition to our 4 sons." "Yes, 7 children total." Kendall nodded miserably. Fletcher sat down heavily. Then he started laughing. Deep, genuine laughter that seemed to come from his core. "This isn't funny," Kendall said. "It's absolutely funny," Fletcher said. "Kendall, we can't do anything normally. First quadruplets, now triplets. We're going to have 7 children. He kept laughing. "That's insane." "I'm glad you're amused," Kendall said coldly. "I'm terrified." Fletcher sobered immediately. "I'm sorry. You're right. This is serious." He moved closer. "Kendall, what do you need?" What can I do? I don't know, Kendall admitted. The doctor says I'll need bed rest, probably for months. I can't work. I can't chase 4 toddlers. I don't know how I'm going to manage this. We'll figure it out, Fletcher said. Together. There's no we, Kendall said automatically. Kendall, Fletcher said gently, you're carrying 3 of my children. We already have 4 sons together. Like it or not, there's definitely a we. I can't do this alone again, Kendall whispered. I barely survived the quadruplets. I can't raise 7 children by myself. You won't be alone, Fletcher promised. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. He took her hands. Kendall, I know you don't trust me. I know I haven't earned the right to be your partner. But please, let me help. Let me be here for this pregnancy. For these babies. For you. Kendall wanted to say no, wanted to maintain her independence. But she was exhausted and scared, and the thought of going through another high-risk multiple pregnancy alone was overwhelming. Okay, she said finally. Okay, you can help. Fletcher's relief was visible. What do you need first? I need to figure out how to tell the boys they're getting 3 new siblings, Kendall said. And I need to not throw up for 5 consecutive minutes. Fletcher made coffee while Kendall sat at the kitchen table, processing the reality of her situation. 3 more babies, on top of 4 toddlers. The math was staggering. We should make a plan, Fletcher said, setting a mug in front of her. Practical steps. Kendall appreciated his logical approach. It helped quiet the panic. Okay, planning. I can do that. First, medical care, Fletcher said. You'll need a maternal fetal medicine specialist. Probably the same hospital where you delivered the boys. Seattle Children's has a high-risk pregnancy program, Kendall confirmed. I'll call Monday. Second, your work. How long can you keep working? Maybe another month if I'm careful. But once I'm on bed rest, Kendall shook her head. I'll have to take unpaid leave. Family law doesn't come with great maternity benefits when you're an associate. I can help financially, Fletcher offered. My new position doesn't pay much, but I have savings. Kendall's pride bristled. I don't need your money. Kendall, Fletcher said patiently. These are my children too. Let me contribute. Please. She wanted to refuse, but practicality won. Okay. We'll split expenses. Third, Fletcher continued, the boys, they need to know what's coming, and they're going to need extra attention when you're on bed rest and after the babies arrive. I know, Kendall said. I've been thinking about that. They're already asking why I'm tired all the time. What if I moved closer? Fletcher suggested. Or, he hesitated. What if I moved in? Absolutely not, Kendall said immediately. Hear me out, Fletcher pressed. You're going to need 24/7 help. Someone to handle the boys while you're resting. Someone to cook, clean, manage the household. Hiring help would cost a fortune. I'm already here 3 times a week. It makes sense. It makes sense practically, Kendall admitted. But Fletcher, us living together, she searched for words. That's too complicated. It doesn't have to be, Fletcher said. I'll sleep on the couch. Separate lives under one roof. Just co-parents managing a high-risk pregnancy and 4 active toddlers. When you put it that way, it sounds completely insane. It is completely insane, Fletcher agreed. But so is having 7 children. We're already living in insanity. We might as well be practical about it. Kendall laughed despite herself. You're really willing to give up your apartment and sleep on my couch for the next 6 months? Kendall, I'd sleep on the floor if it meant helping you and our children, Fletcher said seriously. She studied his face, looking for any sign of ulterior motive. But he seemed genuinely committed. Let me think about it. Take all the time you need, Fletcher said. But circumstances made the decision for her. 2 weeks later, at her 12-week appointment, Dr. Wilson delivered difficult news. Your blood pressure is elevated, the doctor said, and I'm seeing signs of early cervical changes. Kendall, I need you on strict bed rest starting immediately. Immediately? Kendall protested. I have 4 cases to close. 4 children to care for. You also have 3 babies who need you to stay pregnant as long as possible, Dr. Wilson said firmly. Triplets born before 30 weeks have serious complications. We need to get you to at least 32 weeks, preferably longer. That requires complete bed rest, no work, minimal physical activity. Kendall sat in her car outside the medical center and called Fletcher. His phone went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. Panic started creeping in. She was supposed to pick up the boys from preschool in an hour. She couldn't drive, couldn't lift them, couldn't do the normal afternoon routine. She called Zara. Emergency. Can you get the boys from school? Zara arrived within 20 minutes. What happened? Bed rest. Starting now. Kendall's voice shook. I can't work. Can't care for the boys properly. I don't know what to do. Call Fletcher, Zara said. I tried. He's not answering. Then we handle this ourselves until he calls back, Zara said practically. I'll get the boys. You go home and rest. We'll figure out the next steps. At home, Kendall lowered herself carefully onto the couch. Her phone rang. Fletcher. Kendall. I'm so sorry. I was in court and couldn't answer. What's wrong? Bed rest. Starting today. For the next 5 months minimum. Fletcher was quiet for 3 seconds. I'm packing a bag right now. I'll be at your apartment in an hour. Fletcher, we didn't agree. We're out of time for debate, Fletcher interrupted gently. You need help. I'm providing it. We'll figure out the details as we go. True to his word, Fletcher arrived 60 minutes later with 2 suitcases and a determined expression. He set up a command center in Kendall's living room, made lists, organized schedules, called Paige Morrison to explain Kendall's situation. Paige was understanding. Take all the time you need. We'll redistribute your cases. Your job will be here when you're ready. That evening, Fletcher sat the quadruplets down for a family meeting. Oliver, Parker, Quinn, and Ryan sat on the couch, looking curious. Boys, your mama has some important news, Fletcher began. Kendall, you want to tell them? Kendall took a breath. You know how you have each other? How there's 4 of you. 4 quadruplets, Oliver supplied proudly. Right. Well, Mama is going to have 3 new babies. You're going to be big brothers. 4 pairs of gray eyes went wide. 3 babies? Parker asked. At the same time, yes, Kendall confirmed. They're called triplets. Will they look like us? Quinn asked. They might, Fletcher said. Or they might look different. We won't know until they're born. When are they coming? Ryan asked. In about 6 months, Kendall explained. But until then, Mama needs to rest a lot. The babies need Mama to be very careful so they can grow big and strong. So Dad is going to live here and help take care of you, Fletcher continued. I'll do breakfast, school drop-off, dinner, bedtime, all the things Mama usually does. You're staying? Oliver's face lit up. Like a real family? We are a real family, Kendall said quickly, even if it looks different than other families. Over the next weeks, Fletcher transformed into a full-time parent. He woke at 5:30 to prepare breakfast, got 4 toddlers dressed in their color-coded outfits, managed the preschool drop-off, returned home to check on Kendall, worked remotely from her kitchen table for his legal aid job, picked up the boys, managed dinner, bath time, and bedtime routines. Kendall watched from her prescribed bed rest on the couch, feeling useless and grateful in equal measure. You're good at this, she observed one evening after Fletcher had successfully negotiated 4 boys into pajamas. I'm getting better, Fletcher corrected. Last week I put Quinn's pajamas on backward and didn't notice until morning. The boys don't care about backward pajamas, Kendall said. They care that you're here. Fletcher sat on the edge of the couch, careful not to jostle her. How are you feeling? Physically? Enormous, Kendall said. I'm only 16 weeks and I already look full term. You're carrying 3 babies, Fletcher said. You're supposed to be enormous. He hesitated, then asked, Can I feel them? The babies? Kendall's first instinct was to say no, to maintain boundaries, but her defenses were eroding daily. She took his hand and placed it on her stomach where she'd felt the first flutters of movement. Fletcher's eyes widened as he felt a small kick. That's them? That's them, Kendall confirmed. Incredible, Fletcher breathed. All 3 of them in there. 2 boys and a girl, Kendall said. The doctor told me at the last appointment. Fletcher's expression shifted to wonder. We're having a daughter. The boys will have a little sister. They sat like that for a long moment, Fletcher's hand on Kendall's stomach, feeling their children move. It was intimate and terrifying and felt dangerously like something more than co-parenting. Kendall pulled back first. You should finish cleaning the kitchen. The boys made a disaster at dinner. Right, Fletcher said, standing quickly. Sorry. I didn't mean to overstep. You didn't, Kendall said. We need to be careful about boundaries. I know, Fletcher agreed. Co-parents, nothing more. But late that night, after Fletcher had bedded down on the couch and Kendall lay in her room, feeling the triplets somersault inside her, she wondered if they were lying to themselves. Living together, raising children together, building a life together. How long could they pretend it was just practical arrangement? The pregnancy grew more difficult. At 20 weeks, Kendall's blood pressure spiked. Dr. Wilson prescribed medication and even stricter rest. At 24 weeks, contractions started. Fletcher rushed Kendall to the hospital, where doctors stopped the labor and kept her overnight for observation. The boys were terrified. Is Mama okay? Ryan asked Fletcher, tears streaming down his face. Mama is fine, Fletcher assured him, gathering all 4 boys close. The doctors are taking very good care of her and the babies. Can we see her? Oliver asked. Tomorrow, Fletcher promised. Tonight, you're staying with Aunt Zara, but I'll be at the hospital with Mama. The boys clung to him, and Fletcher felt the weight of fatherhood fully. These 4 children depended on him, trusted him, loved him, and he would do anything to protect them and their mother. At the hospital, Fletcher sat beside Kendall's bed. She was asleep, exhausted from the contractions and medication. He held her hand, watching her breathe, and made a silent promise. I won't let you down, any of you. Whatever it takes, I'll be here. Kendall opened her eyes. Fletcher, I'm here, he said. The boys are with Zara. They're worried about you. I'm okay, Kendall said. Just scared. Me too, Fletcher admitted. What if I can't do this? Kendall's voice broke. What if something happens to them? Nothing is going to happen, Fletcher said firmly. You're strong. They're fighters. We're going to get through this. We, Kendall repeated softly. We, Fletcher confirmed. Kendall, I know you want to keep boundaries. I know you don't trust me completely. But please know this. I'm all in. These babies, our sons, you. I'm committed to all of it. Not because I have to be, because I want to be. Tears slid down Kendall's face. I'm so tired of being strong alone. Then stop being alone, Fletcher said. Let me carry some of the weight. Kendall squeezed his hand. Okay. They kept Kendall in the hospital for 3 days. When she finally came home, Fletcher had transformed the apartment. He'd set up a proper bed in the living room so Kendall wouldn't have to navigate stairs or hallways. He'd organized a station with everything she might need within arm's reach. He'd even hung photos of the boys where she could see them. You did all this? Kendall asked, looking around. The boys helped, Fletcher said. Oliver picked which photos to hang. Parker organized your books. Quinn brought you his favorite stuffed dinosaur to keep you company. And Ryan made you this. He handed Kendall a drawing. 4 stick figures labeled with their color codes, plus a slightly larger stick figure labeled Mama, and a tall stick figure labeled Dad. Above them, Ryan had written in careful preschool letters, our family. Kendall started crying. Hormones, she claimed. But it was more than that. The boys rushed in from the bedroom where they'd been waiting. Mama, you're home, Oliver shouted. Careful, Fletcher warned. Gentle hugs only. 4 boys carefully climbed onto the bed, snuggling close to their mother without putting pressure on her stomach. Kendall held them, breathing in their little boy smell, feeling Fletcher's presence nearby. This was family, messy, complicated, born from pain and mistakes, but real. At 28 weeks, Kendall woke in the middle of the night soaked in fluid. Her water had broken. She called for Fletcher, her voice tight with fear. Fletcher appeared instantly, already dressed. He'd been sleeping in his clothes for weeks, prepared for this moment. Call 911. I'm calling Dr. Wilson. The ambulance arrived within minutes. As paramedics loaded Kendall onto a stretcher, she grabbed Fletcher's hand. The boys. Zara's on her way, Fletcher assured her. She'll stay with them until my mother arrives. Your mother? She flew in yesterday. Just in case. Mom's been wanting to meet her grandsons anyway. At Seattle Children's Hospital, medical teams swarmed. 28 weeks was early, but viable. The babies would need NICU care, possibly for months. But they had a chance. Dr. Wilson made the call. We need to deliver now. The longest baby Sassy has ruptured. We can't wait. Fletcher held Kendall's hand through the emergency C-section. Unlike with the quadruplets, when she'd been alone and terrified, this time she had someone to squeeze when the pain hit, someone to whisper encouragement, someone to share the fear and hope. First baby is out, the doctor announced. It's a boy. A thin cry filled the operating room. Second baby. Another boy. More crying, slightly stronger. Third baby. It's a girl. The smallest cry of all, but determined. Cooper, Graham, and Hadley, Kendall whispered. Our triplets. Fletcher watched as 3 tiny bodies were whisked away to warming tables, surrounded by medical teams. He'd missed this with the quadruplets. Missed the birth, the first cries, the terror and wonder of new life. They're so small, he said, his voice breaking. They're fighters, Kendall replied. Like their brothers. The triplets spent 8 weeks in the NICU. 8 weeks of monitors and feeding tubes and terrifying alarms. Fletcher divided his time between the hospital and home, caring for Kendall as she recovered. From her C-section and managing 4 energetic boys who wanted to meet their new siblings. When can we see the babies? Oliver asked every single day. Soon, Fletcher promised, when they're a little bigger. Finally, at what would have been 36 weeks gestation, Dr. Wilson gave approval. The boys could visit the NICU. Fletcher prepared them carefully. The babies are very small. They're in special beds called isolettes. They have wires and tubes to help them. It might look scary, but it's helping them grow strong. The quadruplets were unusually quiet walking into the NICU. Fletcher led them to the 3 isolettes in a row. Cooper at 5 pounds, Graham at 4 pounds 12 ounces, Hadley at 4 pounds even. They're tiny, Parker whispered, staring at Cooper. Were we that small? Quinn asked. Even smaller, Kendall said from her wheelchair. You were all under 3 pounds. Can we touch them? Ryan asked. The nurse showed them how to reach through the isolette ports to gently touch each baby's hand. 4 boys took turns making contact with their new siblings, their faces filled with wonder. Hi, baby Cooper, Oliver said softly. I'm Oliver. I'm your big brother. I'll teach you about dinosaurs when you're bigger. Hi, Graham, Parker said. I'll teach you about science. Hi, Hadley. Quinn touched the tiny girl's fingers. I'll protect you from monsters. Hi, babies, Ryan said to all 3. I'll share my toys with you, and I'll love you forever. Kendall was crying openly. Fletcher put his arm around her shoulders, and for once, she leaned into him instead of pulling away. At the 10-week mark, all 3 triplets came home. The apartment that had barely fit 4 toddlers now contained 4 preschoolers and 3 infants. The noise level was astronomical. The chaos was exponential. The exhaustion was crushing. And somehow, they managed. Fletcher had become an expert at feeding assembly lines. At midnight, he'd line up 3 bottles, 3 babies, and power through feeding them in rotation. Kendall would pump breast milk while he burped them. The quadruplets, now 4 years old, would help by fetching diapers and singing to their siblings. One night, 3 months after bringing the triplets home, Kendall stood in the doorway of the boys' room. All 4 of them were asleep in their beds. Oliver sprawled across his pillow, Parker curled into a ball, Quinn with his arm hanging off the mattress, Ryan clutching his favorite stuffed animal. In the nursery, Fletcher had set up in what used to be Kendall's office. 3 cribs held 3 sleeping babies. Cooper on his back, Graham on his side, Hadley making soft snuffling noises. 7 children. She'd given birth to 7 children, with 1 man. The odds of that were astronomically impossible. You okay? Fletcher asked, appearing beside her with a bottle for the next feeding. I'm exhausted, Kendall admitted. I haven't slept more than 90 minutes straight in 3 months. I smell like baby spit up constantly. My body will never be the same. I have no idea how we're going to afford college for 7 kids. But, Fletcher prompted, hearing something in her tone. But I'm happy, Kendall said, surprised by her own words. Completely overwhelmed and running on fumes, but genuinely happy. Me too, Fletcher said. He adjusted Hadley's blanket. Kendall, can I ask you something? What? When are you going to stop punishing me? Kendall turned to look at him. What? I'm not saying I don't deserve it, Fletcher continued. I do. I deserve every wall you've built, every bit of distance you maintain. But Kendall, we're living together, raising 7 children together, building a life together. At what point do we acknowledge what this actually is? And what is it? Kendall asked, her heart pounding. A family, Fletcher said. Not just co-parents sharing space, a real family. And Kendall, I love you. I've loved you since the day we met 7 years ago. I loved you when I was too stupid and scared to trust you. I loved you during the 3 years I searched for you. I love you now, watching you be an incredible mother to our 7 children. I'm not asking you to forgive me for what I did. I'm just asking if there's any chance you might feel the same way. Kendall's defenses screamed at her to shut this down, to maintain the boundaries, to protect herself from potential heartbreak. But she was tired of being defended, tired of pretending that living with Fletcher, raising children with him, depending on him didn't mean something, tired of denying that somewhere in the past year she'd started falling for him again. I'm terrified, she admitted, of trusting you, of believing this is real. It is real, Fletcher promised. Kendall, I can't undo the past, but I can promise you the future. I will show up every single day. I will put you and our children first. I will be the man you deserved 4 years ago. You hurt me, Kendall said, tears spilling over. You destroyed me, Fletcher. Do you understand that? I was homeless and pregnant because of you. I know, Fletcher said, his own eyes wet. And I will spend the rest of my life making up for it, however long it takes, whatever you need. Kendall looked at this man who'd thrown her away and then rebuilt himself into someone worthy, who'd sacrificed his career for integrity, who'd moved into her apartment and slept on her couch for 6 months, who'd learned to manage 4 toddlers and 3 infants without complaint, who showed up every single day. Ask me, she said. What? What you asked me 6 months ago, before I was pregnant. Ask me again. Fletcher took her hands. Kendall Rhodes, will you marry me? Not because we have 7 children, not because it's practical, but because I love you, because I want to build a life with you, because when I picture my future, it's you beside me in all of it. Kendall took a deep breath. Yes, 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 I'll marry you. Kendall smiled through her tears. Because I love you too, because you've proven you've changed, because I'm tired of pretending we're just co-parents when we're so much more. Fletcher pulled her close, kissing her with 4 years of longing and regret and hope. In the nursery behind them, Hadley started fussing. In the bedroom down the hall, one of the quadruplets called out from a dream, real life interrupting their moment. I'll get Hadley, Fletcher said. I'll check on the boys, Kendall replied. They moved apart to handle their children, but something fundamental had shifted. They weren't 2 people managing chaos separately anymore. They were partners, a team, a family. The wedding was small, just immediate family and close friends. The quadruplets served as ring bearers, each carrying a pillow down the aisle. The triplets, now 6 months old, were held by Loretta, Zara, and Paige. Kendall wore a simple cream dress. Fletcher wore a suit. Loretta officiated. 4 years ago, Loretta said to the gathered guests, Kendall came to my shelter alone, pregnant and terrified. She had every reason to give up. Instead, she became one of the strongest women I've ever known. And Fletcher, she turned to him, you made the worst mistake of your life, but you've spent every day since then proving you learned from it. Their vows were simple and honest. Fletcher promised to show up, to listen, to put family first. Kendall promised to trust, to forgive, to build a future instead of living in the past. When they kissed, 7 children cheered. Oliver shouted the loudest. Quinn whistled. Parker clapped analytically. Ryan cried happy tears. The triplets had no idea what was happening, but gurgled contentedly. At the small reception in Zara's backyard, Fletcher pulled Kendall aside. I have something for you. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a deed to a house. Not a mansion like the one he'd thrown her out of, but a warm, family-friendly home with enough bedrooms for 7 children. It's in both our names, Fletcher explained. Equal ownership. I never want you to feel like you could be thrown out of your own home again. Kendall looked at the deed, then at her husband. Her husband. The words still felt strange and new and right. Thank you, she said. For this. For everything. For becoming the man I always believed you could be. Thank you for giving me the chance, Fletcher replied. For letting me be part of this family. They stood together, watching their 7 children play in the yard. 4 identical 4-year-olds chasing each other, 3 babies being passed around by relatives. Chaos and noise and perfect imperfection. It's not a fairy tale, Kendall observed. Our story. It's messy and complicated. The best stories are, Fletcher said. He pulled her close. We broke. We healed. We built something real from the broken pieces. That's better than any fairy tale. As the sun set over Seattle, Kendall Rhodes Grayson stood in her husband's arms, surrounded by their 7 children, and felt something she hadn't felt in 4 years. Complete. The journey from that rainy night to this moment had been brutal, full of pain and struggle and moments when she'd wanted to give up. But standing here now, watching Oliver teach baby Cooper about dinosaurs, watching Parker read to Graham, watching Quinn gently rock Hadley while Ryan sang to her, Kendall understood something important. Some love stories aren't about people who get it right the first time. They're about people who break, who fail, who fall apart completely, and then make the choice every single day to rebuild, to forgive, to try again. Fletcher had thrown her away in the rain 4 years ago, but he'd also searched for her for 2 years, sacrificed his career for integrity, moved into her apartment and slept on her couch, learned to be the father their children deserved, proven with consistent action, not just pretty words, that he'd changed. And Kendall, she'd survived alone, built a career from nothing, raised 4 children single-handedly, became strong enough that loving Fletcher again was a choice, not a need. They'd both grown, both changed, both became better versions of themselves. Their family wasn't perfect. 7 kids guaranteed chaos, arguments, struggles. Money would always be tight. Sleep would always be scarce. But they had something more valuable than perfection. They had truth, commitment, the kind of love that survives being destroyed and chooses to rebuild. That night, after all 7 children were finally, miraculously asleep, Fletcher and Kendall collapsed on their couch in exhausted contentment. 4 years ago today, Fletcher said, I threw you out in the rain. I remember, Kendall replied. Worst decision of my life. Best thing that ever happened to me, Kendall said. Fletcher looked at her in surprise. She explained, if you hadn't thrown me out, I never would have become who I am. Never would have gone to law school. Never would have learned I was strong enough to survive anything. Never would have built the career I love. Would you change it? If you could go back. Fletcher was quiet, thinking. A year ago, I would have said yes in a heartbeat. I would have erased all of it. Your pain, my mistakes, the separation. But now? He looked toward the bedrooms where their children slept. Now I wouldn't change a thing, because this, our family, was forged in that fire. Would we be here if I'd believed you that night? I don't know. Maybe we would have had an easy life. But easy doesn't make us who we are. Struggle does, Kendall finished. Pain does. Surviving together does. They sat in comfortable silence, holding hands, listening to the quiet sounds of their children breathing in nearby rooms. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. 7 kids to feed, clothe, and nurture. College funds to build. Teenage years to survive. A lifetime of showing up for each other. But tonight, in the quiet after the storm, Kendall and Fletcher had everything they needed. 7 children. 1 complicated, beautiful, hard-won love. And the absolute certainty that they would face whatever came next together. Because they'd already survived the worst, and they'd come out stronger. The rain that had once torn them apart had watered the seeds of something new, something real, something built not on the fantasy of perfection, but on the reality of 2 imperfect people choosing each other every single day. And that was more than enough. It was everything. Kendall and Fletcher chose to rebuild, chose to forgive, chose to become people worthy of the love they wanted. And now they have 7 beautiful children and a love that's real because it survived being destroyed. What will you choose? Will you stay broken? Or will you use the breaking as your beginning? Thank you for watching Love and Twilights with Dr. Phillips. Until next time, remember that the best love stories aren't about people who never fall apart. They're about people who rebuild together. Keep believing in second chances. Keep fighting for what matters. And never, ever underestimate the power of showing up. Your story isn't over. It's just beginning.